I want to understand transmutation better. I've lived a long time without doing it properly, and that's caused a lot of negative things to happen in my life. A lot of wasted time and potential. A lot of the times we have this urge to express sexually. We have this urge to, lash out angrily. We have a lot of lower urges. But the point is not to be, separate from them. And the point is to really learn how to turn it into something better. With my sexual nature, it's very easy to squander that energy, but it is better actually to turn it into art for me. It's better to turn these drives into something else. Lower drives like anger could be turned into a better body. And there's many times where I had been angry either at myself or at, the situations around me or other people. And when I had taken that anger into the gym, it turned into fuel. Same with the sexual energy. It's like I took that into the gym too, and that turned into fuel. And I would say that's what a lot of these things are, is fuel. The fuel to be able to better yourself. The fuel to be able to work too. I had really never used the proper outlet for that sexual energy, which is just to confront somebody, not even confront somebody, to talk to somebody, to engage somebody. And when I did, it was too much so, almost forceful. And there's no balance there. A lot of the times we can see parallels between our lower drives and the higher nature of reality. And, if we can engage with the higher nature of reality with a different pattern, we could also engage with the lower natures of our reality with a different pattern. Now, maybe it has to start there, because it is the foundation. These lower energies are the foundation of the higher energies. But at the same time, if you are coming from a place where you've never done that before, you have to start from a place where it's just you versus the world. And slowly but surely you can pattern that in other areas. As long as you start doing it, it's really just you changing at the end of the day. Your associations will change. Instead of you being somebody who, wastes that energy or is kind of masturbatory with that energy, you do something about it. That's a change. That is a real change, a tangible change that moves on into other areas. Transmutation is a skill set that moves from, transmuting those lower drives into higher drives to now transmuting negative thoughts into positive thoughts. I have a lot more experience with that, where certain thoughts come up and they reflect a negative message. You're no good. The transmutation of that is, instead of me saying that I'm no good, oh, she's about to knock her first item off of a table. Go ahead, Vivi. Go. Beautiful. You are now a cat. Congratulations. Anyway, that drive of let's say that thought of me going like, I am a piece of shit, could be translated into, I don't like these aspects about myself. From there, you have two paths. You can accept certain parts of yourself or regain a better relationship with certain parts of yourself that you cannot change. And the parts you can change, you can change now. What can I do to change these things? That is transmutation, because you've taken this negative and you can use that negative to beat yourself up, or you flip the narrative. And the thing is when negative emotions come up, we have the separation between that emotion and the narrative that is associated with that emotion in our brain. There are many other things which can transmutate. Disease can be transmutated to health. I mean, they are just indicators, but these negative habits or negative things that negatively impact our body should be flipped. And you should want to replace cheap and easy energy like caffeine with a better schedule to fuel you, a better source of food that will fuel you. If you have diseases, now this is a chance for you not only to heal from that disease, but also now to better your lifestyle and improve your lifestyle so that you never have to deal with that disease again. And a lot of the times people don't think about that. People are thinking about the immediate thing that is happening to them, you know? That's in all forms of transmutation. It's just the response to the trigger. You know, if the indicator of having a disease is the trigger, they just have the response of, oh, I have this. And that leaves you prime for, you know, whatever medication that you're supposed to take for that disease. You know? Instead of improving the lifestyle, you continue your lifestyle that led to that disease in the first place, and you're just putting something on top. You're taking something or putting a topical. No, you heal from within. You know, if you are just responding to the trigger of being horny, then you may, you know, find somebody who wastes your time and you waste their time, and you're both wasting each other's sexual essence, or you waste your own sexual essence with a screen, or you put it into something else. Not everything that agitates you needs to be responded to the way that you think that it needs to be responded to. Granted, yes, somebody angers you, that may require an immediate response, especially if they're out of pocket, especially if they're screaming explicatives at you, or if they're just blatantly wrong. You have to call that out. It's not like these things don't have their place, but how often do you think about whether or not the drive of horniness could be put into something else, whether it be exercising, whether it be, you know, working, or whether it be creativity, whether it be just something else, anything else. How often does that come up? Because these are usually how we deal with certain things like addictions. You know, there's that experiment called Rat Park where, you know, they gave rats access to, you know, drugs. Excuse me. And rats would overdose on those drugs as long as they were isolated and had no natural environmental factors that they usually play into. But when they were put around other rats, when they were put around, when they had mates, when they had environments that they can play around in, they didn't touch the drugs at all. You know? Now, a rat utopia will lead to the downfall of the rats because they start to, you know, kill each other. The alpha rats will hoard all the women. All the other rats will be lethargic and don't do anything. You still need actual resistance to go through in life. You know, we use rats because they reflect our brain extremely well. But, you know, when we actually engage in other things that use that drive better, we don't engage with the thing that's siphoning our energy, you know? And a lot of people enjoy these vices, but they don't see what is missing, you know, what's being taken away. So, in essence, transmutation is necessary for us not to fall into our lower nature, our lower drives. You know? And it's the first step into understanding our, you know, human experience, really, I believe, because that's what we did when we were younger. I was watching this video, and I'm going to put a link to this video in the description because I think it's necessary. Not necessary, but I think it was an important video for me to watch. It was necessary for me to watch. As a reminder, just a subtle reminder, we all need those from time to time. And it's like, the video was talking about how we have the analytical or the learning mind, and we have the doing mind. And when we were younger, that doing mind was a lot more active. You know, we learned by doing. We were like, oh, to walk, you gotta get up and fall down and fuck up a couple of times, and then all of a sudden you're better at walking. But it's in the process of doing it that we got better. But throughout time, then we went to school and we started to learn. And that part of our mind became better, while our doing mind became more lethargic. And a lot of the times, even Jordan Peterson talked about this when it came to certain college students. You know, this is before Jordan Peterson became ideologically subverted by the right wing. He's talked about how, you know, and he was always a right wing person, but he became their face instead of talking about psychology and whatnot. Anyway, he did say something that was extremely valuable, which was that a lot of people go to school in this sort of Peter Pan syndrome way, you know, because school keeps you in a state of potential. Now, there's two sides. You have potential and you have action. When you're learning, you're building up potential. It's like pulling back on a slingshot. When you act, you release it. You know? Now, it's funny because a slingshot, it's weird, you know, the action is to pull back, and the inactive part is releasing. But potential is a form of energy. It's a storage of energy. And when you're learning, you're storing energy. But potential energy needs to be acted upon. It needs to be activated in order for it to turn into any other form of energy. Fat is a form of potential energy. And you keep storing more and more fat. But the thing is, eventually, if you fast, if you start to work out, you can turn that into another thing. You can turn it into muscle, Now you're turning that stored potential energy into kinetic energy. And that kinetic energy is now being used to form your muscles. It's being used to energize you. Let's say if you have no food whatsoever, and if you could starve yourself either voluntarily or involuntarily, now your body is using that fat. It's being turned into other forms of energy. And your body is going through a state of ketosis, in which the fat is being used to power your brain, to power other metabolic functions in your body, so on and so forth. You need action. The action upon that drive turns that potential energy into something else. These lower drives are just potential forms of energy, and we can turn that into anything we want. It's so powerful that you can make a baby with it. You can make life with it. But if you don't use it, there is a limit to how much you can store. If you don't let out your anger, it will come out anyway, and it will be bad. Worse than if you just let it out in the first place. If you don't use your sexual energy, then it will pervert and come out in weird ways. And you don't want it to do that. Eventually you may jack off. Eventually you may find somebody and have sex with them and deal with whatever consequences that come with that. And that trains you. That trains a certain kind of lifestyle. We are a culmination of our actions. So if you were to look back at what you did for the past couple of years and it was shit, it was negative, that is now your identity that you associate with yourself. And you can transmute that identity, don't get me wrong, but that is where you're working from. The transmutation now turns this present moment as the starting point. And if you were to live completely differently, transmute that energy and do something better with it, you look back and you have something to be proud of. It's going to be way better than squandering it. Squandering it does nothing. You're not doing anything. You can be destructive with your anger. You're not doing it. You can be destructive with your sexuality. It's not adding any value to the world. It's not adding any value to your own life, to yourself, to anybody within your immediate circles. You're doing nothing with it. So turn it into something else, And you need a catalyst, You need a change in thought process. You may need some outside motivation. You may need an internal motivation, and that internal motivation is just you going, I don't like this. I don't like anything that happened before this. I don't like this at all. It's way better. But the transmutation has to happen, because if it doesn't, it gets squandered. You know? Food has to be eaten or it spoils. And that's just it. That's just how it is, you know? And I know there's certain scriptures that bits and pieces come to mind in regard to exactly what we're talking about now. I can't think of it, but there's so much we can do, you know? We ourselves are seeds that have branched and sprouted into trees. You know, if you look at our brain, if you look at our bodies upside down, it's like a seed planted and the branches are our nerves, you know? And we produce fruit, but it's not, you know, it's either going to be in a sexual sense or it's going to be in a spiritual sense. And spiritually, our actions reflect that, our fruit. You know? What fruit do you want to produce? Do you want to produce vacuous, shitty fruit? Or do you want a bountiful fruit? You know? So, removal of just low effort behaviors to act on that potential, and just injecting positive behaviors that can use that potential energy. It's way better. Way better. And that's why I don't script any of these videos. I just talk off the top of my head, because it's an immediate reaction to me feeling, you know, some sort of urge, you know, whether it be anger or sexual. It's a reaction because I don't want to squander this energy. I want my life to be something completely different from where I'm at even now. And it's not because I'm dissatisfied, you know. I'm grateful for my life, you know. I have a fertile ground of gratitude that I'm working for. You know, I have a loving family. You know, I'm in a great place right now in my own life. And I'm able to support myself right now, you know. Even if it's not the way that I want to, I can still do it. And that's great. You know, that's way better. Way better of a thought process than any negativity that I can find in my situation. I'm grateful, but I want better and I want more. There's certain ideas that come up in my head that could be expressed, and I've spent years doing nothing about it. So, you know, those years that I didn't do anything about it, they're dead years. But they could be used as fertilizer by learning my lesson and looking back and transmuting that lesson, going like, you know what? I didn't do much for a lot of my life. And I did a lot, you know. There's a lot of positive that I've done, but I didn't push as hard as I should have. I didn't go and do a lot of what I should have done within my head. There's a lot of actions that I didn't take. You know, there's a lot of challenges that I didn't do. And I don't like that I didn't do it. What could I do now that's different? How could I use that energy within me differently? And that's beautiful. I love that. I'm going from here on out just like this, talking, speaking into a camera, and just going on ranting, reveling. It's way better of an outlet. And I have other outlets, you know? Physically, I have a good outlet, you know? Mentally, I have great outlets, you know? And even the storage and learning of information is a better use of time than being consumptive, you know? That's also a way of transmuting that consumptive energy, you know? If we have that consumptive energy, if we're going to consume anyway, clean up what you're consuming, because that also adds a better fertile ground for the actions you produce. I'm learning a lot more spiritually. I'm diving back into, you know, certain subjects that I wanted to get back into, you know, math, sciences. It's important because at this point in my life, my spiritual mission is to translate the spiritual from all that woo-woo, like flowery language into something hard and tangible for people to use. It's way better. Way better. I've always thought that, you know, the spiritual will reflect into the physical in some way, shape, or form, you know? I just then came across things like the Kabbalion, and one of the dictums there is, as above, so below, as within, so without, you know? So all that flowery language, it's not like that doesn't exist, but it exists only in headcanon alone. So where is it playing out physically, you know? I've seen it happen in a couple of places, you know? The scriptures that talk about certain things that can lead to how we see a Fibonacci sequence and a spiral in nature, you know? These things can translate, you know? Even that saying, as above, so below, as within, so without. All of these things reflect in our physical world. And I want to be better at picking up on those things, so I got to learn about it. That's a better thing to ingest. That's a better thing to ingest, way better. You know, spiritual things I can ingest. Math, science, I can ingest. Even philosophy, I can ingest. You know, so I'm doing my best to transmute what I'm ingesting. You know, mentally, physically too. You know, I've cleaned up my diet a little bit within these past couple of weeks, and I'm proud of myself. I'm gonna keep going, you know. And last but not least, still when it comes to thoughts, but now when it comes to how we speak, transmute your language. Our thoughts is the logic behind the code of our language. And our language codes and contextualizes our actions. If you clean up your language, you will do better at cleaning up all of your actions. And you'll do better with perceiving more and more positive things in your life. Because if you keep telling yourself you're a piece of shit, you will find every reason and every way that you are a piece of shit. But if you say, I'm improving myself daily from the worst state that I've been in, then you will find every way in which you are improving. If you say, I have conquered these things, you will find ways in which you will continue to conquer. And that plus action, like tangible action from transmuting your lower drives, will lead to a better state of mind. It will lead to a better self-esteem. And that's what you need to do. I've been in a state of inertia long enough for me to beat myself up, go into bad negative habits, and realize there is a better way to act and operate with these things. So now, to have a better self-esteem, I have to act and think better. You know, Action is huge. It takes you out of inertia. But thinking better is huge because it takes you out of the negative headspace in which you only see negative. It literally changes the context of your life, and that's all it is. You don't need it to be something spiritual where it's like, oh, no. You have a reticular activating system. I believe I'm using this brain function correctly. You have this reticular activating system that is constantly solving issues. And if you're feeding the issue of how can I find more negative things about me, your reticular activating system will find more negative things about you. But if you find or if you have the imperative of, or the prompt of just finding more positive things about your life, or finding ways in which you could improve, and finding ways in which you have improved, and feed that into that subconscious problem solving mechanism, now that subconscious problem solving mechanism is going to find more and more ways in which you can be positive, have a positive life, have positive actions, have a positive outlook. Transmutation is necessary in multiple areas of your life, and that is the starting point of not being this automatic animal that just goes off of drives. You're more than your drives. We all are. What do you want to do with your life, and how are you going to do it? Start by transmuting that sexual energy. Start by transmuting your anger. Start by transmuting a lot of things that would go into a wasted behavior. If it wastes your time and if it wastes your energy, it's not worth doing.